Good evening and welcome to Under the Microscope. I'm your host and presenter, Michael Young. Thanking you very much for joining me this evening. This evening, I'm going to be interviewing President Donald Ramotar, and we're going to be finding out from him right here at TVG some of the issues that would have been engaging the public's attention over the last couple of weeks. What are his perspectives with respect to those issues? President Ramotar, welcome to Under the Microscope.
Thank you.
I know you've had quite a packed day, quite a packed week, and so we're going to have this discussion around several events that would have been taking place in our country. Of course, the first issue that I'd want to discuss with you is the issue with respect to Amaila Falls and all that would have been taking place in the public domain. First of all, you had said the last time in a public statement that there's still a small window of opportunity with respect to the project, and you did allude to all of the overtures that would have been made with the opposition leader to bring them on board with the project. Today in the newspaper, as printed, you released a statement and the opposition leader says that his position remains the same with respect to the project. Are you disappointed, given all that you would have done as president?
I'm terribly disappointed, to put it mildly, because Amaila has such a fantastic potential for our country. As everyone knows, I don't think it's debatable now. I think everyone accepts that cheap energy is indispensable for our rapid economic and social development. Apart from the fact that it will remove a lot of irritation to of our people with blackouts and so forth, at least minimize it, bring it down to the lowest level. But it is very important for us to have cheap energy because it has great potential of helping with industrialization, helping us with processing. You know, we have a large agricultural sector, and we can process more goods, we can add more value to our products, and we can export more and attract more investment in the productive sector of the economy. So the fact that Amaila is really in jeopardy at this point in time, it is a great disappointment because I think it's a great opportunity that is being missed. And this was a case where we had a bird in the hand, and we could have developed that in the interest of our people, of our country. So I am terribly disappointed that the opposition failed to recognize the importance of this project. Either they failed to recognize the importance of the project, or they refused to rise above partisan political agendas but in the whole process, whatever it is, our people are the ones who would have been held back and left behind in this whole process.
Are you too concerned that you would have only recently in the statement extended the olive branch and invited the opposition leader and his team to discuss all of the issues with respect to the project, two main issues too that were raised? From all of your discussions with him, does it seem as though he is willing to accept that invitation to participate and to bring a conclusion to all that would have been taking place?
Well, generally, I don't know. I mean, of course, that is his decision in the final analysis. But what I would say is that I don't think that they are being completely truthful when they say that they didn't have consultation on these matters. Because shortly after I became president, I invited them to sit with me to have a presentation made by the technical people and to point out the importance of this project and to give them a lot more information about it. At the end of the first presentation that we had, I even told them, with all the material that we had given them, that I recognized then that they didn't have their technical people with them. And I told them that they could take the documents, have it examined by their technical people, and come back to me and we will answer any question or clarify any issue that they may have. And I even extended that offer for any of the other projects that we have on stream, that if they're interested, I'm ready to set up similar meetings with them to deal with any projects that the government would have. Subsequently, Site Global came to the country and made presentation to the opposition as well.
Yes.
These matters were raised during the budget debates of 2012 and 2013 in the Parliament. Every single question was answered. And I was heartened because they had voted money for the road
Yes.
to go on and so forth. So I thought that that was an indication that they had agreed. Because obviously we're not building a road to nowhere. We want to
Yes.
build a road to the hydropower plant. So I was optimistic that, that we will build the road to that. But they continued to first of all, I was convinced that the APNU probably would have supported it because they were not saying anything. The AFC was sniping at it all the time and said that they want to have, they're waiting for somebody to give them the okay to support, and all the other making criticism, using their sympathizers in the media, a really bit of an idle class who seems to have nothing to do to denigrate the project. Even though you keep giving them information and facts, they continue to try to denigrate the project. But as I said, to me, it's a very, very important project to bring down, in 20 years' time, the only cost we will have with electricity from Amaila would have been the operating costs. And because we would have paid back for the whole investment and everything, Guyana was not going into any debt. That's why we were not adding debt to the country. The guarantor that we were giving was a guarantor that GPL would buy the power from Amaila Falls company. And it is something that we were already doing, spending money. It would save the government, save the taxpayers $6 billion in subsidy that we spend. It will save us a huge amount of money in imported fuel. So there was so many positives about the project, and apart from the spin-off that it will have in stimulating economic growth and development, that I am, of course, very disappointed that we have reached this stage. I think that we should have all been able to rise above these type of things to see national interest. When we were in the position that the opposition is at the moment, when we were believed about nationalization and so forth, the PPP gave support to the then PNC government to nationalize sugar, to nationalize bauxite. We supported them 100% because at that time we were strongly think that we were and believe that we were taking a national interest. And unfortunately, that is not reciprocated in this time.
Are you heartened, President Ramotar, by the response of civil society and all of the other stakeholders, minus the opposition, with respect to the project and the fact that Guyanese are taking the matter and voicing their concerns?
Yeah, no, that's very important, that the various sections of our society, they're making their opinions known on this matter and making their voices heard on this issue. I think that is very important. It's giving clear signals to all those in authority that this is a very important project. And it has, as I said, it cuts across, because as I mentioned in my speech that I made a few days ago, this is one project which positively touched the life of every single Guyanese, even those who might not be able to get onto the grid. But the savings that we will have, we will be able to satisfy much more of their needs from fuel and from the subsidy. And apart from that, the stimulation to the economy with attracting investment will certainly create a bigger economy and to help us to solve a lot of problems in many, many areas that we still have problems with resources. We could have solved many of those issues.
President Ramotar, there has been calls for you to apologize for different things that you would have said with respect to this project and all the issues. Will you be apologizing for your posture and position with respect to this project and your own, conviction about the actions of the opposition as of recent?
No, I don't. Look, I am a person, if I think I'm wrong, or if I think there is a need for an apology, I would make an apology. I don't have any problem, but I don't see anything to apologize for at this point in time.
Okay, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the National Assembly and the way forward. When you became president back in 2011, shortly after the elections, you had announced in your address to the parliament at the first opening that you wanted things like consensus and compromise to deal with the deadlocks that were anticipated with a minority government. And subsequently, you made several statements to the effect that you're not at all pleased with what's happening in parliament. You're now, well into your reign as, your tenure as president. Are you concerned about parliament, the 10th parliament in particular, and the precedents that it would set for future parliaments and the track record of our country across the board?
This is a fairly new situation for us
Yes.
as a country, but it's not a new situation internationally. There are different experiences in which you have governments where they don't have the majority in parliament. Even in the United States, sometimes the president doesn't have the majority in Congress and so forth. But it depends on it depends on both sides and their commitment to the national development, and also an understanding of our various roles in the various structures of the state. Over the years, the state has evolved, and in a democratic society, they have three main branches of the state. You have the executive branch, of which I am the head in our situation. You have the legislative branch, the parliament, and then you have the judiciary, an independent judiciary and so forth. So I think what is happening, I had hoped that we would have used this to help to advance our country and build on it and so on and so forth. But I still think that there is probably a lack of understanding of our various roles in the various sections of the state in which we operate in. That the parliament is very important, but the parliament cannot substitute for the work of the executive. And that is part of the problem that we're facing, that the opposition thinks that they want to take executive power to the parliament, which is impossible. It was never, the constitution in our country is not designed for that, nor is it anywhere in the world designed to do something like that. It is an area where you pass laws and so on and so forth, but not to try to use the parliament to usurp executive authority, which you don't have. The parliament doesn't have those powers constitutionally. So I hope that the opposition will understand what is the role of parliament. And in that way, if they do, then I think they can play a more constructive role in the whole general process of the development of our country.
You were part of several tripartite talks, if you want to call that inter-party talks with the opposition as a method of probably making the parliament work and resolving differences before you reach the National Assembly, have they worked, in your own opinion, President Ramotar, have they solved the problems, encountered in parliament?
Anyhow, the important thing that we can still talk, but the experience so far has not produced a great amount of success that we can show. For instance, in 2012, we engaged in talks with the opposition about the budget. We made concessions to them. One day, the next day, we had agreement on some other issues, which they totally reneged on. And that ended up in a fiasco. Even though the Prime Minister had shared with them the statement that he would make to make sure that he had everything correct, that he was not misrepresenting anyone. They agreed that it was a correct interpretation. However, they reneged on that agreement with our agreement with the electricity and Linden situation. So we've had areas like this where we have an agreement and then they break the agreement. Another very disappointing thing, not necessarily confined to the parliament, but our relationship with the opposition. When we had the issues at Linden, we agreed to set up a a commission of inquiry to find out exactly
Yes.
what happened. The part of the opposition insisted that it should be an international commission of inquiry.
Yes.
So we agreed to have a combination of a regional and local commission, 5-person commission. And when the commission started its work, and as the people started to follow the work of the commission, at the same time, the opposition did not wait for the commission to conclude its work, but they started with one kind of attacks and so on and so forth. In the commission, they withdrew some of the. I think that we had a tacit agreement that we will all wait for the commission to finish its work,
Yes.
and then we will pronounce on issues. But that was not the case, and we saw their behavior in Parliament in trying to prevent Minister Rohi from speaking and all of that, as you know. So the results of our dialogue, I think, could have been much better in the interests of our country.
Okay.
To move forward.
I want to ask, what disappoints you the most about the opposition's posture with respect to all of the developmental projects that you would have introduced as president from the time you took office? Specialty Hospital, Amaila Falls, we can talk about the CJIA expansion project. Almost all of these projects have been blocked.
Well, there are many projects have been blocked. I saw them make a statement recently, a few days ago, in response to what I said in the speech that I made, that they cut a lot of the projects from the interior community, from the Amerindian community. But that could be verified. You can go back to the record and see when they cut the LCDS program,
Yes.
they cut the issues of dealing with Amerindian land titling. They cut the program that dealt with the Amerindian funds to create an Amerindian fund. They cut the program to give in solar panels into these areas and so forth. So all of that they had cut, and I saw them denying that, but maybe they've forgotten what they did, or probably they were just cutting for the sake of cutting and not realizing what they were cutting, because if they would deny something like that, which can be verified in the parliament, it's obvious that I was disappointed too. Apart from the Amaila, which is a major disappointment, I'm disappointed in their attitude towards the anti-money laundering bill. That is because that bill is important for our country as a whole, as a government, and for the private sector, and people to do business generally with the international community. And therefore, when they have refused to bring the bill to the parliament to pass, which can put our country in difficulties and put us on a list of countries that with all the other connotation that it brings to it, then of course it is not good for our national development. It is not good for our international business transactions and everything else. And I thought that whether you like me or the government or not, at least you should think about the national interest. And if there's anything that is harming the national interest, then any one of us, whatever our role, our position in society, should try to ensure that the national interest is protected at all times. And then therefore, by refusing to bring the bring the bill before the closure of Parliament, it is a great disappointment that they have not risen again to the occasion, which is a national occasion, once more in our society.
How is the president and the presidency responding to all of this? Because it's obvious, President Ramotar, that from the time you took office in a very precarious situation, and one would have wanted a majority in the National Assembly to be able to implement one's policies and manifesto promises. Given the fact that that has not been able to happen as you would have hoped, or easily as you would have hoped, how are you responding and coping as president?
Well, I'm doing the best that I can in the circumstances. Of course, it would have been much easier
Yes.
to operate when you had a majority situation. But even if we did have a majority situation, while I admit, I'll be the first to admit it would have been far easier, I think my approach to the opposition would have remained the same, because I would have liked to build consensus. I would have liked to engage them. I think that if I had the majority in the parliament, I would have done the same consultations that I have done with them on the very project, because I think it's important to convince people about the goodness of some of these issues that we've had. And to remove, I know that there's a history, I know that we have a past, and I know that there will be suspicions. And sometimes I believe that the opposition get carried away with their own propaganda and start believing some of the things themselves that they're saying. So that is why I think that dialogue is very important. So even if I had the majority that we had in 2006, I would have done the same thing in trying to engage and discuss with them. However, I think we would have had a better results in the parliament, having a majority. But I will still try as far as possible to, I've said before the last election, when I was of the view that we would have had a majority in the parliament, I made a commitment then that I was ready to work with the opposition in the interest of our country. And I'm still ready to do that, to work along with not only the opposition political parties, but all the stakeholders in the society. Only yesterday we concluded, or the day before yesterday, an activity at the convention center looking to engage with all the various, to use the popular term, stakeholders in the society, yes, for us to try to craft a way and chart a course that all of us can support in building our country.
Now, I want to know, are you concerned to President Ramotar that there seems to be a very strategic attempt, I wouldn't want to say by persons known, but I would want to say persons unknown as well, to create a situation in the country where it appears that it's ungovernable, forcing government probably to call a snap election, forcing investors out, and bringing again, just before an election, lots of uncertainty on the part of the people with respect to the way forward generally for the country, regardless of who is in power?
Well, you might be right that there probably would be people thinking in that direction. But my own view is that when you come down to the bottom line, I would say that the PPP civic government has managed this country in a fair way. We're working very hard to give equal opportunity to everyone. The resources of our society is very fairly allocated, and if you look at it from any point of view, you will see, I think that people, even those people who probably don't support the government, I think that they can see clearly that this government is not, that the opposition propaganda about discrimination and so forth, that it does not hold any water. That this government has been a government promoting unity, trying to bring people together. Our resources, as I mentioned just now, being very equitable distributed. We have new hospitals in almost every single region in our country. Where we win or we didn't win, we have new schools in every single area of our country. We have invested heavily in education. Our students are beginning to do better right across the board. I mean, look at, could you imagine 20 years ago that a student from Essequibo would have been the top student in the country and probably in the whole Caribbean? So this gives you an idea that we have been allocating our resources in a very, very fair way. Our health services, our housing program benefits everyone across the board. All our programs, there is no one who can in any way point to any of the government programs to say that it is discriminatory and it is exclusionary. In fact, they're all inclusive, in bringing people together.
I want to ask you, has your vision for Guyana changed compared to when you were a presidential candidate then and now that you're president. And I point you to your statement at Port Morant. You had said then that you were interested in dealing with issues of corruption. You had said then that you were willing to create a platform through which Guyanese would be able to realize their dreams regardless of their race or their political aspirations altogether. Is that the same vision that you have in the mid,
No, I haven't changed. I haven't changed those positions. Those positions remain the same. We are constantly, I mean, if you look at what we've done, not only me, but the PPP civic government, from its inception in fighting corruption, we were the ones who institute the bidding system to have competitive tender in our society. Before we came into the government, you never had that. We are the ones who allowed the Auditor General to do their work. They were prevented from doing the work before 1992. The last Auditor General report came out before the government changed in 1992. In 1982, 10 years before, that was the last. So you had a Public Accounts Committee but did nothing. They had no work to do because you had no Auditor General's report. Since we got into the government, we have not only have the Auditor General reports every year, but also we allow the cameras in the Parliament, not only the cameras in the Parliament, but in the committee levels, so that the people can see what is taking place at the committee levels. We have had not only the Auditor General report, but we have report from the Public Accounts Committee. And after the Public Accounts Committee work, we had Treasury Memorandum, in which the Ministry of Finance expresses what they will do with some of the shortcomings found within the system itself. So I think we have done an enormous amount of work to clean up the culture of corruption that started in the time of the undemocratic regime. And what is important to note that we didn't anticipate that it would have been so difficult to root out that culture that built up over the 28 years of undemocratic rule within our society. But we have been constantly fighting it and fighting it by putting systems in place so that we can clean up the public life. And if you look, I have given out completely all the privatization that was done to the media, to the public, laid it in the Parliament, laid it in the public, so that everyone can examine and see for themselves, because they were talking about all of these corrupt. Since then, they're no pointing to anything specific anymore. They just continue to talk in this general way. I've given them all the privatization deals that was done, and ready to talk to them about any other issues that they have in relation to the big projects that we have in our society.
Let me address what some may assume to be a very sensitive issue with you, President Ramotar. You have been the General Secretary for the ruling party for a long time now, and you were the General Secretary during the time of President Barrett Jagdeo. There seems to be some sort of propaganda, if you can call that, or a position in the opposition, that there's not much difference between the way you are managing our society and some of the things that the PPP has done before. Could you address that for me? What is the difference that you have brought, not necessarily in comparison, obviously, to the former president, but during your tenure and given your experience too at the level of the party which you're at the helm of now?
Well, I'm not really worried about some of the things that are being said, because our party always works as a collective. I don't know if you remember, but when Jagdeo became president of our country in 1999, for a long time, the media was saying that he was a puppet of Freedom House, a puppet of Janet Jagan, a puppet of Ramotar, and so on and so forth. Now they're singing another tune. So I don't think that we should put too much emphasis on that. But I have been in the center of, in the leadership of the PPP long before we came to government in 1992. And I have been part of the decision-making process of the party and government from the very beginning, right through. So these projects are not projects that people just pull from under their hats like that. These are things that were thought out, were done in a very collective way, and I continue to work in that way, in a collective way, with my cabinet, in a collective way, and with my party executive in a collective way as well. So I think my own view is that's the best way. That they always say that two heads are better than one, and many would be better than a few in this regard. And I am always open to new ideas. I don't claim that I have all the ideas, but I think that we can find those ideas in discussions within the collective itself to move our country forward. And that is why we have a very open policy. We listen to all views and make decisions on issues and not necessarily on who said what.
You had said too when I had interviewed you while you were a presidential candidate that you wanted what was called then and what you believe, I hope now, a free press. A press that would not necessarily banter the whims and fancies, or media rather, of some in the opposition or some in the government, that would truly represent the interest of the Guyanese people across the board. Are you concerned too that these continuous negative reportage with respect to the development of Guyana and all of these things could have far-reaching effects on our economy altogether, and that the media really in Guyana has to become more responsible? Is that a position that you want to endorse? I heard you had echoed that.
I agree with that fully, because we have a free press. We have an open press, a free press. There's no censoring of news, and therefore we have a very open and free society in that regard. But the press itself, at least a part of the press itself, is not an independent press. I will describe it more as being an opposition press.
Why?
Because the line that they carry is fundamentally the opposition's line. Sometimes some of them are not necessarily opposition only in relation to their links with the opposition parties, but they have also their own opposition agendas. And some of them, if you look at some of them, they represent certain trends within our society. I've said so publicly, I said so recently at the party's Congress, the 30th Congress. It's in the report that I presented to the Congress of the work of the Central Committee, where I pointed out that some sections of the press represent an era in our country that has passed. This is an era where these people used to sit down with our colonial masters and Georgetown Club with a bottle of whiskey and make decisions for the country. And then one section of the press represents the growth of the novi rich, those people who became rich during the times when things were bad in this country, those who were doing trading, bringing in trading, traveling to and from different countries or neighbors or further afield, and selling goods. Many of them have become extremely rich now, but they now have money, but they don't have political power. And a section of the press, the opposition press, represents that group of people who wants to get greater political influence, and they are in that way influencing the opposition. And their hostility to us is because of their inability to influence the government or the PPP from that regard.
You had told your supporters at the 30th Congress never retreat, never step back, never give in to what you had described as people who support anti-development positions. What does that mean, President Ramotar?
Exactly what I've said there, because as I said, look at some of the commentators. Let's just even take this Amaila Falls thing, in which we have demonstrated that the country will not be going into any debt. But you have commentators, including some opposition people, talking about how much debt we will be contracting, something that is totally untrue. Or that they're saying that the price of the electricity will not come down. I'm surprised at some of these people who are saying these things, because they ought to know better. It just seems to me that they cannot shake off some of their biases, some of the biases that they have and some of the negativity that they have. and they continue to try to hold back the country's development in that regard. That is why I was exhorting our supporters that they have to ignore that group of people who are making these noises and not to allow us to distract us or to remove our focus and from what we are here for, and that is to help ordinary people to have a better quality of life, to lift the standard of living in our country. We have done a lot. We have just gotten an award from the United Nations for achieving the Millennium Development Goals 3 years before 2015. And we have done more than that. We have increased the nutrition of our country. This is according to the FAO, a United Nations body that recognized this. But there are still many poor people out there. There are still people that needs a chance, an opportunity to be able to blossom out and to bring their full potential for their own self-development. But in the process of their own self-development, they will be applying it in the society that will help our society to go forward. And that was the message I was trying to tell our Congress, not to lose focus because we are being sniped at by people who probably have not done any practical thing in their whole lives and achieved very little in their whole lives. But we should keep focus and try to continue on the positive advancement that we have been making over the years in our society.
As we wind down our interview now, President Ramotar, what is the legacy you want to leave behind after when you demit office or at the head of the next election? If you fail, let's say, to gain re-election or the government changes.
I think in things in more general terms. Okay. For me, what would be most important is that when I would have departed, that I would have left a country that is better than what I would have been able to build on the successes of previous PPP civic governments, and to build on it to give our people a better quality of life.
And now that you're president, things with the family, how has it been? I know you're extremely busy always at meetings, and given all that would have been happening politically, you may have not had lots of time. I don't want to assume. You tell me, how has that been?
Well, my children are adults now, so they don't need the same type of attention as children who are not adults. They have been educated children. They have done well with their studies, all three of them, and they are very capable young people. So I don't have to give them the same attention as if they were going to school at primary or secondary school and so forth. So that helps in one way. And my wife was accustomed to me always being busy because when we got married, I was already deeply engaged in politics. And I remember my only condition of getting married to her is that I'm not migrating anywhere when we got married. So don't raise that question about migrating to go anywhere. That was my only condition. So I would say that it's a life that they have been accustomed to. But at the same time, I must add that even though I have always been busy and engaged in politics and public life that kept me away from the home, whatever time I spend at home, I try to have quality time with them and with the family and so forth. So I am happy with my family life as it is at the moment. I don't think I need to change it at this time.
Are you still, finally, as we end our interview, are you still in touch with all of the people that you would have been, because I think these are things that persons want to know, are you still in touch with all of the persons that you would have been in touch with were you not president? Are you still keeping, as general secretary of the party, all of the connections with the grassroots people and all of the persons who may not be able to access your office on a daily basis, but are, still interested in probably sharing their concerns with you as it continues to affect them?
I would say that, of course, being president, some things have changed because your days have changed. You have become much more busy and much more occupied. But as far as possible, I still try to keep in touch with my acquaintances my party colleagues, my comrades, my friends, my relatives as much as possible. It's of course different than before I was president, but at the same time, I have still tried to keep the links as much as possible.
Okay, well, thank you very much, President Ramotar, for joining me and under the microscope and sharing your perspectives with respect to all of these very important issues that are engaging the public's attention. And we do look forward, probably under different circumstances, having an interview with you where you may be able to report on some of the positives with respect to the Amaila Falls, the anti-money laundering bill, and all of the other issues that are engaging the public's attention. Is there anything finally you'd like to say to the public?
Just to respond to what you've just said, and there have been a lot of positive developments that we have done as well, but because I think we're so close to what took place at the level of Amaila, that our focus has been on some of the difficulties that we've had working. But there are many positive things that we have. I still think that we can achieve a lot. I still hope that the opposition will reflect on the sentiments of the broad masses of people. As you mentioned yourself, that it seems only the opposition was against this project. So if they want to respect democracy, I think they should take lessons from this and let us work for a better Guyana. I'm going to continue to work to ensure that we have, I hope that, as you said, there's a very small window of opportunity still remaining. And I'm going to continue to push for this, and hopefully I can get the window bigger and bigger, and we can have hydropower very soon. But I am committed to working towards having cheap energy in our country, because I am convinced that it is indispensable for our further development in our society.
Well, thank you very much, President Ramotar. And as everyone knows, in the words of Margaret Thatcher, she says the wheels of industry must turn, and it must be business as usual after every single high point in political life. So I trust that that will be the situation in our country as we proceed along the path to achieving development overall. Thank you again for joining me in Under the Microscope. And thank you very much, viewers, for spending time with us at TVG Channel 28. I'm Michael Young saying goodbye, and do join me for another program when we're going to examine all of the issues that are making the news. Goodbye.